Mic check. Welcome to the channel, guys. This is Reliable Rudy. Before we go into any analysis or before I go over the title, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this video contains only my opinion and it's for entertainment purposes only, and just trying to give you guys some entertainment and make some money in the process. Right now we're playing this ELBM, as it was holding in the middle of this green candle about halfway through this 15-minute candle, holding those 25s. That 25 was a low. We tried it and we have one fill to the upside at 244s. So if it comes back in, we're going to try it around those 25s again. Not the most amount of size. You never really know if that candle is going to work. But coming in at the tail end of this candle, I am going to see if this can be a continuation play. This red candle really wasn't the biggest, and that volume was still spiking pretty good. That first candle, almost 2 million in volume, had a lot of liquidity coming through on the name. And of course, some of these other ones, the only one on the title is one that I was playing yesterday, which was Lucid, which is nice to see. We're playing this sort of flat top break. My first fill came in at 701, somewhere in this candle. And then we also got a 95, and we were on the bid at 690, just never got the fill. So a couple fills, and we had one print to the upside. I believe it came in at 23s. But we're looking for further movement. The reason why I wanted to trim 23s is just because that gap was right there. We seen it fill it, and it was just hovering right here and just trying to hold. And that was when I was like, okay, we're below the gap fill. Let's take a market fill. So other than that, those are the only tickers that we have. Like I said, on this ELBM, up 88% on the day. I don't really have the most amount of size on this one, just because, I don't want this to come on back in and take a big loss on the trade. But if this wants to be a continuation play, we got a minute 40 left, so maybe we need one more red candle of consolidation where I can get it at a cheaper price. Mr. Drift, how we doing? Yeah, this ELBM is going to take a lot of focus right now until I'm a little bit more confident that we got the entry that we want. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where we close with a minute 20 left. And the fill that we have is 42, so I thought it was 44s. They kind of screwed me on that fill, which is alright. Wick high of this candle gets up to those 50s. But a lot of volume coming into this. We think that this candle can still turn green in this last minute, so I'm not counting it out. It's like I said, a lot of volume coming into this one. On the RBLX, I believe we had some good fills. We got a trend line that we're kind of playing. And there's 40 lots on 36 right here, and a lot of size coming in. I'm actually going to try and punch in and get a little bit more size on this, averaging up. It's below my first little fill, but as it's kind of just sitting right here, we're going to see if we can get some continuation. 230 lots on 38s right now. So let's see if we can get some upside move. Kind of ate through that the back half of this candle, but I like the way that this red candle looks. Get the wick of buying. Let's see if we can just get one indecision candle and see if we can start turning green on this name. Still not really the most amount of size where, if we come back into the middle of this green candle, I think I may try just a little bit more. But like I said, this one could easily just flush down on me, so I do got to be careful with that. But holding those 38s, which is that size that was coming on in. So if we can get back over 40s, 50s the next thing that we're looking for. So if we get over 50s, we think that we can get some continuation. If we take out days high, we're going to have a big winner here. So the other trade's really not as volatile as this one, and actually starting to come on back in. Just looking for size to come back in front of these 25s. If 25s hold, we think that we have a winner here. But I am realistic that if 25s give up, that 2 could easily come in very quickly. Candle holding green here. We got 40 lots on 39s that we got to fight through. So really, as long as this candle can be kind of an inside candle inside of this previous red candle, I'm going to feel pretty good for this to maybe start building up. As long as the volume can stay hot, and I really think that this one can be a continuation play. I think the news catalyst with it is a partnership with LG. I don't know much about the company itself. I seen it was getting a lot of volume, and we had a couple movers that were up above those 20s, but really this was the only one that kind of struck my attention. This one, a lot of indecision, where ELBM had this nice green candle, and like I said, just the way that this held in the middle of that green candle just spoke a little differently, spoke a little bit different to me. But still fighting in the middle of this, so we don't think we're out of the woods yet. And this ENPH, we added this one to the watch list. Couple of nice green candles right there. I don't know what the news catalyst is with this, but last week I did not do good trading sub $1 stock, so I'm not really interested in really trying it. If I would, I think I would try that FFIE, which had I tried it on this neckline break, I was watching it. Would have been looking pretty good, but I'm not going to try and chase it right now because I do have to keep my eyes on this ELBM. Of course, GFAI multi-day runner. It's got a lot of eyes on it over the last couple weeks, and there's 184 lots on 230s right there. So if I really wanted to punch a little bit more size, I think even though it's a little bit higher price, punching in front of those 100 and protecting that order. Not necessarily that my order is going to be the one that, oh, yep, size is in, we protected that order. No, not necessarily. But every bit of buying does help. As long as those 230s don't punch in, because I can't see what's underneath those 230s. I don't know if there's any size off those 25s, but the candle turning green right now. This one, not a half bad look. Still a lot of time left on this candle, of course. So you got to keep that in mind that, just because, the candle started turning green and it looks like, oh yes, we can finally get some movement to the upside. Hold your horses a little bit because, this candle could easily just end as a red candle, full red engulfing into the middle of this green candle still. But 240s now, able to fight through that 240 order. Now let's see if we can. Nope, we weren't able to hold those 40s, but bid is chasing up. I had a few lots go through with these 38s, so they're trying to push this price. I should probably go take a look at, try and get just a glimpse. So the Affirm, that was a very good ad. Same with the Roblox. The Roblox took 40s, so that's a really good start. The one trade that was in the red for me today was this PAGS. Oh, my Dutch is downstairs. Dutch, stop! You gotta go lay down. You gotta go lay down. We tried this PAGS. Dutch, go lay down. We tried this PAGS. We were watching it yesterday for maybe a continuation play because we liked this green candle that got over top of this neckline. And today gapped up. We thought we'd get some continuation. We still think we can get continuation. We're just slightly in the money. It's not a volatile type of trade. Inside our range is from 11 to 1060. So really not the most volatile. But we think that we can run this up for some continuation, even if it needs to pull back in down to this neckline. More than likely I'd probably get stopped out, but I would definitely be a buyer in around this 1025 in the middle of this green candle. So just in case it doesn't want to pull back into that 1025, we want to have this for a little bit of continuation. As you can see, we have a channel marked out. Maybe it even needs to pull back into 10 flat. So we're keeping our eyes on this, but we started our position there. Keeping an eye on this ELBM over here. We're still sitting around those 240s, so doing all right. But let's go take a look at the Affirm. We added to some of that position today, and actually it wasn't really the greatest price. It was right around these 1740s right here as it was starting to break over top of this. And you know, when this candle started coming back in, we said, okay, if it pulls back into the gap, we want to see that gap get filled and buyers come in. Well, now we're taking out the highs. So looking very good on that. And ELBM taking out the highs. So I'm going to go over the roadblocks real quick, and then we'll go back to that. We bought a little bit of roadblocks yesterday near the end of the day, and reason being is we kind of like this trend line, and you know, we were playing this flat top, and we had some good trims up here. We actually held it in all the ways down, so part of my position is not looking the greatest as we're playing 42s, but we averaged in more than triple the size that we had off this trend line. So if we start catching a bid into the middle of this red move, gonna have to be respected. And still trying to fight over 40, so not out of the woods yet. And ELBM is starting to get a break. So let's start focusing on this, and let's take a piece while we get a chance. Let's start taking a little bit of size off. We missed that opportunity for 50s, but let's be patient. Back over top of those 50s. Let's take a piece right there. Let's see what that fill came in at. So right there we got 50 flats. So taking, that was a 5%. So we're taking 5% off. And if we get this breakout, you know, I can probably take one more 5% before this break. So if I see it push up into those 60s, we're going to try and take a piece off. And maybe I just go right on the ask right here at 60s. I'm going to get ready to place this order. But failing those 50s, coming right back in. So good, able to get one trim off of that. So I'll take that for the time being. But we still think that this battle has a lot left in it. 6 minutes left. Decreasing volume still, so let's see if we can just maybe have some indecision right here. I don't want to see this come all the ways back in the 20s. It's worked really hard to maybe try and break out. So let's give it the time that it needs. And I should go take a look back at that Lucid trade. You know, really not doing much today. I really wanted it to start breaking out off this candle. But we kind of got the entry that we like. We took this 7 break. And I wasn't interested in averaging up just yet, just because yesterday we just filled the gap. So if we need to come back in and retest in towards these 7s, that's all I'm going to be worried about for the time being. But this ENPH, this was a nice mover right here. So I'm a little disappointed I didn't try it, but you know, maybe a little gun shy from those trades of last week. And I don't really like that wick top right there, but as long as it shows me a wick of buying pressure, I'm gonna feel pretty good about this one still. Still 42 lots, so a lot of buyers are really trying to push this price up. Is it going to be able to hold, though, is the real question. It came in, it rejected those 50s pretty aggressively. Five minutes left on this candle. And really the big mover right now is that Affirm trade looking really good. RBLX still fighting around those 40 flats. And this PAGS trade kind of rejecting those, or trying to hold those 75s. It doesn't look like it's going to be able to hold those 75s, leaving that wick. Might be struggling to get a little bit of buying pressure. FFIE, that was the other trade that we really wanted to maybe take a look at. And RXRX looks sloppy off of my trend line that we have drawn. But maybe there's something that's supposed to be more so like that. So still could be in some sort of channel. It's not really the most clean channel right there. But I do just notice that this affirm trade, we didn't add the most amount of size, but we did make an add and repurchase some of those shares that we got out over those 18s. But as it was just holding this price down here towards these 1650s a couple times, we looked at this as some sort of neckline break that we could get. Now it's starting to come into play a little bit. So not interested in trimming any of the affirm yet. We're going to see if we can get that price action back up into the 18s. Up into the 18, it's been resistance. We can trim it up there a couple times, and maybe if we're lucky, we get that movement up in the 19s. And why I say 19s is because it doesn't get there here, but if you look over here, this is that resistance over into the 19s that we're looking to get. So that's a breakdown of pretty much everything that I've been watching. We have some good swings going on. 3M, I thought the earnings were good. Obviously, with the write-off of the litigation, um, the numbers itself in terms of EPS wasn't really the greatest. But that's going to be a 1/4 type of deal, and on a non-GAAP basis to report 217 EPS for a stock that was trading underneath 100, I think is reasonable to punch long. So we like the catalyst there, and year over year still buying back. I think it was like, I believe it was like 26 million shares. So as long as they keep buying back shares, we think that we can punch the long. And I am going to try in the back half of this candle just adding just those shares back that we cut briefly. And now if we get back up to those 50s, we're going to respect those 50s. But by no means do we think that this is a beautiful setup now with that wick kind of false breakout look right there. But we did have some size off 37s. They're trying to push this name up. I don't know if they're going to be able to or not. But we're going to give it a chance. And if we end up getting stopped out, we end up getting stopped out. I mean, there's nothing that we can do about it. But we do think that if of the names that we're playing today, if one was going to break out and just be a home run trade for us, it's this one. So minute left, minute 20 left on this candle. I said that if it can hold this indecision type of look, that I'm going to like it. And 41 mil volume, if the way the size of these candles are, just very small size, it's not going to take too much if it can just put a green candle, and anybody short that's tried short is going to be out of the money. We think that we can get some price action to the upside. $38 lots, 8 through 38 lots, 92 lots on 36. So this is the size that's still trying to hold up right here. Is it going to be able to? I'm not sure. But that 36 is the price that's pretty much keeping this from being a red engulfing candle to the downside. So if those give up and we set a price down near these 30s, that's going to leave that kind of death candle look. So 8 seconds left. Let's see if we can show some strength into the very back of this candle. And pushing into a green candle, let's see if this can show some momentum going into this next candle and get some price movement. But another part that I like about it, I like how this wick from this whole 15-minute candle stays higher than these 25s. We haven't seen what that size looks like on 25s. So I'm okay with that. If we never come back in the 25s, I'd be surprised, obviously, if this price didn't take out the highs. But a lot of time left before we're really expecting it. But this is candle number 3. So if it wants to start picking up now, we're all for it. Not much size on the bid here at 37s, trying to hold it. But we know that we have that size at 36. Hasn't come back into 36s yet. AFRM still up in those upper 17s. No size on 36, so I do gotta be careful with this. I'm gonna make sure I know how many shares I got. Make sure I'm quick on my feet. If this wants to start flushing down, we're gonna have to make a decision. You know, obviously for the entertainment purpose, you guys would like to see me hold this as long as possible. But I'm not interested in trying to take a losing trade. We only want to have the winners. But back over top of these 40s, you know, all it would take is for this to really start catching a bid and retest those 50s. If we get over top of this wick top from the previous candle, you know, we think that this can start going. But any test up to those 50s, we're going to start taking off. What would this be? Right around a little under 5%. But back into these 30s again. This fight has been legit. Let's say it could go either way. ENPH coming on in just a little bit, leaving a lot of wicks right there. I'm not really the biggest fan of that. You know, you could say I'm a hypocrite for these wicks, but just this is still inside of this green candle move, and you can see it starting to build this sort of smaller uptrend. If I switch to a 5-minute chart and actually taking out some of these lots on the ask right here, 160 lots on 45s. If it's able to get over 45s, it's going to be a slippery slope for anybody that's been trying to punch short on this, and we are getting this bid to stack on 40s. You know, it took out those 40s, but it protected some of these upper 30 orders just a little bit. We'll see if these 30 orders can hold, and right back over 40. So they didn't give any time for people to get on the ask at those 40s. Just hold above these 40s, and we think that we can get a breakout. But when I go to this 5-minute, you're going to see how it's, you know, all it would take is for this to get back over 50s, and boom, you're going to see that green engulfing candle probably up to test of 3. But really near this decision point on a 5-minute, we'll see if that can be a catalyst for a hold. Ripley, you're okay. My dogs are fighting. Ripley, you're okay. Come on, come here. 116 lots. Chased up. Oh, it ate through those pretty quick though. 33 lots on 37s. Showing you that red candle. 10 minutes left on this candle though. AFRM back in towards those 1750s, which is alright. And I would say today is about as depressing as yesterday, and the reason being is Vail. You know, we talked about Vail near the wick lows at 1250s. We were on the bid the day it was there at 1250. He got as low as like 56 or something like that. And we were never able to get the fills that we truly wanted. We had a couple orders to go through, but now we're talking. We're getting 54 lots on 241 right here. 65 lots, so bid's really stacking. As long as it can hold that bid, we think that this could potentially be the move we're looking for up into those 50s. It wasn't able to hold just yet. Took out 40s. Still holding right here. Still trying to hold these 40s. Can we get this green engulfing candle to push through the price? Mr. Drift, you're back. My bad if I'm bad at looking at the chat today. When I get in these volatile ones right here, sometimes I'm just laser focused in. Especially when it's just been a nice sideways chop. Since we've been in this, it hasn't really given us any moves either direction. But you can see the indecision. Inside candles. This one had that false break. But pretty much the range on this current candle is only like 8 cents, which is pretty insane for the amount of volume that's coming into this, which makes the hair on my arm stick up just a little bit, because it gives anybody short a little bit of time to try and get in, and then if it goes against them, they really start hemorrhaging. And that's where you see those big price movements. But bid stacking up to 43s. Could this be the time? 52 lots on 42s. Let's see if this can be it. 8 through those 42s. Same story as usual. Just true indecision right here. Really trying to fight through. But now the bid stacked on 43s again and getting bigger. 15 lots, 32 lots on 42s. And back down to the 41s. It's just been a true range back and forth right here. Affirm held those 50s for the time being, so that's a good start. A few bids stacking on 42s. The more keep stacking on these 40s. We haven't seen what those 40 orders have had for a little bit. But 8 lots on 43s, 10 lots on 43s. Are we going to get this price movement? 30 lots on 43s, 49 lots on 43s. We're getting ready to take out 44s. 1 lot on 44s, 53 on the bid. It looks like it wants to take it out. Oh, and it just barely fails. One last time. Oh, man. Back into these 30s. Man, that looks really good. The bid was stacking pretty well. If it gets back up there, I don't know how much more fight these guys have. But the buyers really want to push this name up. There was an attempt. Maybe there's just somebody that's keeping it. The more we keep failing, it can be, there's two sides to it. There's a bear and a bull. The more it holds right here and gives time for a break down to back to these 25s. $35 lots on 40s again. Can these orders be the ones that hold 40? But we did give them a little bit more time to stack some bids on the or some size on the ask. Let's see if we can fight through it again. Invax was a trade that we tried yesterday. We tried the 8 hold. It wasn't able to hold 8, so we cut it. And now it's actually, I'm sure it's going to be looking like a pretty solid chart. Let's switch over to it briefly. Oh, look at that. Nice volume increase on these first 2 candles of the day. Right at that flat top we had marked yesterday. How about that? Jeez. If we're just 1 day late again on Invax, it was the same thing when we were back down at those 7s. We were 1 day late. You can go back and look at that. We were 1 day late. We were holding it in this, boom, next day. Oh, God. Oh, boy, I lost where we're at. Oh, up to these 43s. Let's go see what we're looking like. Yeah. There was a little size on 43s, but we got 80 lots on 40s. Are we going to be able to hold and make this break on the end of this candle? We got 3 minutes, 30 seconds left. $172 lots on 40, 167 lots on 40s. Are we going to get some buyers to step in front of that bid? Come on. There we go. We got a couple lots holding 41s now. Right back to these 40s. Bid stacking right above that 40 orders. This is giving the idea this whole time that, hey, the buyers keep holding it up above these 40s. Can this breakout come in the back half of this candle? You can see it starting. The indecision is there. It's tightening down. 126 lots on 40s. We can see a firm back up to those upper 17s, so that is a good hold of that price. RBLX claimed those 40s and significantly pushing up into those 40-25s. So that is a good look on Roblox. Looking at PAGS into 1060s, and we really don't have much size on that. And this was able to eat through those 40 orders. So hopefully we can keep holding these 40s, but gosh, which way is this gonna go? I really don't know. This is I'm very surprised in this price action right here. And the reason being because, you don't really have much more leeway to go if this is some sort of trend line that's trying to hold. All it would take is a red engulfing candle and boom, you're right through that level. There's been a lot of time for people to get in these upper 30s and these 40s, and all it would take is the right person to exit that position, and you see this red candle come back into like 210. Does it hold from 210? Maybe that's where the actual long is going to be at. The retest back into the bottom of this green candle. We can see ENPH, red candle coming in. Doesn't need to pull back. Is this going to be some sort of descending channel being made? I'm not sure. In the back half of this minute, this candle has now finally turned red. And we got 146 lots on the ask at 40 lots. Is it going to be able to fight through those 40 orders or not? The back and forth on this name has been legit. And we just took them out and reclaimed bid stacked on 40s immediately. So 20 seconds left. Are we going to see some longs really start to pump this price in the very tail end of this candle? This next candle is going to be a big candle. One way or the other, I think we're going to get our answer here. Look at the freaking just straight sideways. The indecision on that candle was insane. That is not very common for though. Still got 425k volume in that candle. 372 lots on 37s. I'm inclined to just punch in for a little bit more size here. And try and protect that order as much as possible. But it's eating through that bid, and here it's gonna go to the downside potentially. We do have to get ready to cut this maybe. I said it to myself that this could be the candle that gives us that break to the downside, and here we are. Do I stick with my gut or not? Back down into these 30s. Doesn't look like this is going to be the one. We are getting very close to cutting this. Tested those 25s briefly. Still holding above those 25s. It doesn't look as nearly as good as what it did. We knew there was a reason why it wasn't going to be able to break out, and it looks like finally the shorts are going to start winning this battle. We'll give it a little bit of time to hold these 25s, but if it's not able to, we're going to have to get out of this one. And it's going to be a loser, which sucks. It sucks taking losing trades. but we really did think that we had some potential. We had 2 fills on the name. You know, it is what it is. But it doesn't look like this is going to be the candle that's going to be able to hold 25s. We'll see. We'll see. Not much size on 27s. I would say there is definitely some shorts that gained some control there. As over that indecision, you know, anybody building position over this consolidation period, you know, they're starting to look good and they're feeling really good about that open of this candle. But still leaving a wick into those 25s, which 27s was the original entry. So maybe if we get back on top of 30s, there's a chance, but and bid stacked on top of 30, so leaving a nice wick there. So maybe just anything underneath those 25s maybe is an exit. Scrolling down just briefly, let's get a refresh on the top gainers for today. I don't see a firm, or did that affirm take a nosedive? Or am I just going blind? FVR still holding that position. Roblox still holding above those 40s, which is a good sign. And here we're in at 28. We do got to be ready to cut this because we're not 100% sure if these 25s are going to be able to hold or not. You know, I can't find a firm. And here we're back down to this red engulfing candle. 25 lots on 27s. Giving you that stair step look. All it would take is just a little bit more movement to the downside. The firm is back down to those 1750s, which is alright. I did forget to talk about Zila, which is actually a pretty reasonable chart setup. If I didn't have to keep my eyes glued to this ELBM, I'd go take a look at it. So let's get out of this position before we take a look around, or at least see it start trying to catch a bid. It's trying to leave these wicks right here. 9 minutes left on this candle. It's like, is it going to be able to hold these 25s or not? There's a lot of time left. Down in the 26s, there's only 42 lots. Chunking through those 26s pretty good. And only 44 lots on 25s, and it's eating them up. Yeah, let's just let's just cut it. We took a loss on the trade. Even if it wicks back up in through that, you know, I'm not a fan of holding this red candle in where we're. So we'll take a loss on the trade, and it is what it is. We gave it a legitimate chance to try and break out. You know, a lot of times this wick back into the range is a big tell of how the trade can possibly go. We still thought it was possible for it to take out the high. We still think it's possible. For all we know, this is going to start some sort of ascending channel. But a lot of times, when you see that wick top go just a little bit lower, you know, more than likely it could also be something that looks like that. But holding these 22s for now, it's just not in my taste to hold this with this red candle, even if it wicks back up and above those 25s. You know, it is what it is. But we're gonna move on and see if we can find anything else. The Zila trade, I think, is a reasonable setup, and I'm going to go to this daily chart and show you guys. Setting up this sort of flat top around these 540s and starting to actually catch a bid, but you can see buyers coming in off that 21. It started giving you that curl to the downside, and here we are starting to catch a bid to the upside right here. Let's see what this, you got the increased volume. 7 minutes left on this candle. Is it going to be able to show you that break where we have that marked at 42s? You know, more than likely, you can mark this up to those 50s. That's at 53, so let's move that right down to 50s. And yeah, it's not really a half bad look. Yeah, that ELBM. We knew something was fishy with this price action right here, but as soon as it started giving up and showing this red candle, we could have saved ourselves some money just getting out then, but you know, it happened pretty quick. It was also a tough one to tell. So let's go look around and see what else. We can look at the RBLX coming back in, giving up those 40s, which is all right. I would say this is actually a reasonable setup. Putting that red candle back in to test this wicks towards it. Is it going to be able to hold these 40s and show this wick holding 40s? So you can start seeing it just briefly, and right back up to those 40s. End phase, I'd say, is a pretty notable setup as well. You can see it right here, holding this sort of flat top right now. It wicked up through it, came right back into the level, didn't have the weakness to get down to the gap. Was end phase on there? Good loss mitigation. Yeah, I mean, you can only be so good. I mean, could I have been patient off this open and waited for it to come back in? Maybe test this twos? Yeah, I could have. But then you get the breakout and you're like, man, I could have started this position right inside of this. It's like, you can't always take winning trades. And when you're dealing with something that's already 80% up, it's better to just cut it. And if it goes and starts ripping to the upside, it's like, okay, lesson learned, you know, be more patient on it and go from there. But we thought it was a reasonable setup. Uh, the catalyst was there. It was getting a lot of size that was holding it in the middle of this consolidation. It just didn't work out for us. You know, sometimes that's how it works out, and you gotta be able to live with it and move on. And that's what we're gonna try and do. This FFIE, wicking up towards these lows right here, and I'm just gonna mark the wick gaps up, breaks that down, test. And so you can see it testing here again. Is it going to be able to hold this price action right here? You know, red engulfing to the downside, right near the gap up price. So all it would take is say, hey, let's push it down a little bit further down to this gap fill. It has a reasonable trend line that we've had drawn out, mapped out. We waited patiently, and when we seen it come in down to these 26s, we're like, hey, it's a nice hold. But really the move that I'd be looking for is up to this gap up at 43. So any type of entry near this trend line, we'll just go from the breakout price. We still think that there's 40% movement to the upside if we're able to find our entry and get the move, of course. PWM, we do have a not so good looking channel drawn, but early signs of it. If it actually showed this price movement up to like 54, that is a massive move. So we're not counting it out yet. And the reason being is because this trend line has been holding well. And why I have the trend line set like that is because on this day, you gap down right to it and buyers come in immediately and push this price up. So PWM, and you can see it gaps up. It shows some weakness, like we want to come down to the gap. And now are we going to start building this U shape? We could put an alert right above this wick top right here and say, hey, if we get over 1670, you know, there could be a reasonable trade. But now I can go back to this veil, which Veil is gonna kill me. It only gave us a couple days, but you can see the wedge pattern and the potential for a ascending channel right here when it breaks this wedge. You know, this was a sticky note name down to 1250s right here. You can see the wick low we got to was 1251. I kid you not, we were on the bid at 1250s, and we missed by a single penny. And now to look at the price up here at 15s, breaking over top of this flat top right here on a full green engulfing candle. We were watching it yesterday, like, man, we should just punch in. You know, it's $2, over $2 higher than what we were trying to buy it. And you know, you can call me crazy or not, Drift, but we're also on the bid off 13 flat. You know, the gap's at 1304 and it only gets as low as 1309, but we threw the order in when we seen it was a red day. And to miss out on sort of the wick lows twice, it's like, man, does that ever hurt? That is just a gut punch right there. But let's go take a look at this affirm. Kind of still holding these 1750s, but you can see the catalyst that we're pushing for, where it makes a move to the upside. You know, you're holding the range. It showed this wick up towards this gap. It didn't quite fill it, but a lot of times when I see that wick towards it, I count it. So if this was going to break down, it was going to break down in any of these 3 days. Could it easily broke down? So for it to show a gap up, retrace down to the gap and hold these 17 levels, we like the entry that we have on the name. And this is sort of the reason why we think we can get some movement to the upside. You can see wicking into, so just marking this flat top, it wicks, gives you that false break, comes back in, takes out the highs with a green candle, and now putting a couple wicks in towards his 1750. So this actually looks really good. If I was even patient, didn't try it off the open, I would say, hey, this price could easily catch a bid, and I would be willing to punch in right here if I didn't already punch in at a lower price. But let's look at that PAGS. So this is the one trade that, you know, hasn't really done the greatest for me today. From where we punched in, I think we punched in at 80s. So already 1.5% to the downside. Let's look at this daily candle, and you can see that wick top giving you that look like, hey, we need to pull back into 1025s maybe. So you know, maybe this is one that I could just cut, but you know, it is right at that gap up price. It wicks a little bit lower. So maybe we put that stop right underneath 50s, or we can go the low of this candle. So if it were to take out 45s, so let's go ahead and just throw an alert right underneath 45s. Actually, let's alert it at 50s so that we can watch it at 50s. Maybe it's an ad at 50s. So let's put that in there. And I can see this ENPH. Yeah, maybe some time, but honestly a pretty reasonable setup. The only part is how much volume came out at the top there. You can see nice red candles pushing it down. I don't know when this started. So here's your first 15-minute candle. Here's your second. So a little bit of increased volume, but not the most. And just like that, that red engulfing candle, we stopped out around, you know, where does that fill come in at? You know, it's not going to be the greatest look. We got the fill that came in at 219.5. So that 219.5, you know, it sucks taking a losing trade, but you know, we already saved ourselves a move all the ways back down in the 2. So it's like, you know, there's got to be a give and a take. You always got to know where your outs are at. So even though it's a losing trade, I try to find the positives in the trade, and you know, if it was going to break out, it was going to break out here. And you know, we could have stopped out earlier, but for all you know, it wicks in the 25s and then it takes out the high. So we gave it a chance to hold 25s, and when it wasn't able to hold 25s, we cut it. Simple as that. Lucid still holding above 7s. Not the greatest look. We're on a 5-minute, by the way, so I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But holding positive strength, giving you this curl. Is it going to be able to hold these 7s? I don't really know. But yeah, This one's going to be more of a swing trade, and I'm going to show you why I'm going to play it like a swing trade. Is because we made the move, you retrace down, this gap was filled, gaps up, fills the gap, makes a move, wicks up, doesn't get to this flat top. So I'd say this is going to be the move that we're going to be a little bit more aggressive cutting. But if it can get a price over top of the body of this candle is 25s. So you can see it wicked up to those 25s today. Maybe it just needs to pull back into the middle, which here's your 7 test. We're just going to mark 7s. That 7 test right in the middle of this green candle could be the move that we're looking for. Where our 34 is right underneath 7. So if it were to give up 7s, my out, I'm probably going to run a deep stop down to 80s. I could run a deep stop even lower if I wanted to, but all tough to tell. But we do like the catalyst. If it's able to get over 725s, we think that we can get some price movement to the upside. Let's go look at RBLX. Gave up 40s considerably. Pulling back into the level, not the most amount of volume. But is this uptrend going to be able to hold? You can see the catalyst for the uptrend. You have a nice triple bottom it sets right there. You set a small short-term double bottom right there. You wick back down into it. You wick back down into it. Is this going to be where, okay, let's hold 39.50s and let's get some price movement to the upside? My out is going to be underneath this wick low, which does have a gap fill to the downside here. I don't know if I'm going to hold it down there. So my out's probably going to be 39s. And that probably ends up wicking right into that gap, catching a bid, for all I know. Who knows? But yeah, looking around, BFRG, yeah, I'm not really liking that look. Let's get a quick refresh on this. APLD, we tried to trade on this yesterday. I can't remember where. I think it was actually around this 925 range. We had one out that we printed up to the 72s and ended up getting stopped out. So, it hasn't. I haven't been on top of my game lately. We haven't had that true breakout name in a while. But one that we think can be that breakout name is this Exila. We played around with it at this 5. My best print actually came in last week around these 490s, which I think was on this wick day. And I think we actually had a stop in on this day as well. And maybe no, it doesn't get the 90s there. We had a 490 print day. I don't know which day it was in particular. But you can see the setup brewing right here. We got a fresh positive break. So if we can play this like the ascending channel we have drawn, we think that we can get movement up into 6. Affirm up to these 1770s. Is it going to be able to break over top of 18? If it gets over 18, we feel pretty good about Affirm. AI up 2%, trying to hold these lows right here. The true break I'd say is probably going to be a 42.50. End phase, catching a bid. You can see this end phase trade. I know it's sloppy right here, but keep in mind the true picture. You have an ascending channel right here. We've double bottomed, more than double bottomed off of that trend line. 1, 2, 3, maybe a 4th test right there that you can consider. But we have a channel inside of that, and we have a downtrend that's been respecting. Earnings are coming up. I'm okay holding this in their earnings. If it gaps down on me, I'm more than willing to play this trend line. Now that I've seen it bounce, 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 bounce. We've got 3 bounces off of this trend line. And before that, bounce, 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 bounce. If we're talking about printing this name up at top end of the channel, I'm not going to be worried about getting gap down on earnings. And, if we're just looking at the estimates on these earnings, 725 million is projected revenue with a $1.28 EPS. I mean, every quarter they've killed the EPS, not to mention killed it. Killed it. Killed it. Killed it. I got to take this call. I'll be right back, guys. Oh, brother. A little fantasy baseball drama going on. I told him I didn't have time for it. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my morning though, you guys. I like to try and get the entries early and hold a piece of the dream. And right now what we're playing is RBLX, which, isn't the greatest, but I mean we have good fills, we have bad fills. Uh, we think that it can reclaim these 40s. We think it's possible. The Affirm is working pretty good for us. The Lucid's kind of a dud for the day, but we're playing now like a swing trade. And here we're coming back into these sevens. So maybe I need to set an alert for this 7 flat. If that triggers, then I'm sure I got to go adjust something. Nope, it was able to put that in. But sevens are able to hold for the time being. And I would say this Disney is going to be one that we watch for the remainder of the day as well. Just right near this support level, we think that this is reasonable support down at Disney. These 85s, it is a weak name, so I would say it looks like a short. If you're buying this support level and you're not already expecting this price to break down, a breakdown, to start, you're gonna have to worry about 84s. If 84s can't hold, you had a couple wicks down to these 80 flats, but there is true downside down to, if I mark the top of this, which it pushes it and it retests it, it wicks down towards it, it wicks down toward it. If you're not willing to buy this and hold it into 76, maybe you put a stop in, and then what I'd be saying is that you're going to be risking a wick down into those low 80s and then to catch a bid. I'm thinking long Disney, and I'm okay holding this down into the 70s. I've already accepted that fact. But even below 70s, you have a nice flat top here around this 67 half. That if the price were to get down into those 67s or into the 60s at all, I'll be thinking nothing but long. But looking at the indexes, looks like the Dow is still green briefly. Just kind of a mixed day. Uh, ELBM, let's go take a quick look back at this ticker. As you can see, it wicked down into those twos where we said, if we wanted to be patient, not play it up here, we would have probably played it off this 2 level. We'd be a little bit in the money, but, it's still not the greatest look. It still looks like we're looking like a descending channel from this perspective. At least that's my opinion on it. There's that one guy on the team who takes it very seriously. You'll have to explain what you mean by that drift. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by it. This INPX taking out the highs, so maybe we just picked the wrong mover. Uh, Looks pretty good. Nice full green engulfing candle. 4 minutes left. An entry if you were really looking for something. You could go right off this 32.70. Uh, that's saying that you think that you're going to get price movement to the upside. I'm not going to play it. That's just my opinion, but I just took a loss on ELBM, so I'm not really interested in trying that. I'm going to stick with RBLX. Where looking at it, it is trying to regain those 40s. It got as low as my 21, which is actually the body of that first candle. If it can reclaim 40s, we think that we can get price movement to the upside. Where I would say probably this flat bottom break, it's trying to hold this price, boom, breaks down. This 40 half is going to be an area that, we'd like to trim a little bit there. And then we will, if we're able to break through that, my true upside, I would say, if it's able to catch a bid, would maybe be this low. This is going to be a sell window for me. But looking even further to the side, you can see that we catch a bid off of these lows right here briefly, break it down, and then test up towards it. So that 42 quarter to 42 is going to be area that we look. So this is going to be my next sell window if we break through these 40 halves. And my next sell window after that is going to be 44 half to 45. That's what we're going to be looking for. You were talking about baseball drama. Oh yeah, when you're playing in a not so competitive environment, there is that one guy that always takes it serious. Yeah, there's been some really big drama going in on our fantasy baseball, because there's been some trades that are going through, and there's been a couple people that have been vetoing them, and they've had enough upholds to go through. So, uh, and now they're talking about some trade chats with one of the guys that was vetoing, and he almost had his trade vetoed, and he was making the case that, if that trade would have got vetoed, oh, I would have been so pissed, this, and that. It's just like someone was calling me about it, and just talking about it. I was like, it sounds funny. I'll have to go take a look at the chat later. But yeah, there's always that guy that takes it serious. Me, I'm not really the fan for trading. If other people want to trade, I let them trade. I'm never really that guy that vetoes trades, because there's always a case for, whether I think somebody's getting the better end of the deal or not. Somebody has a reason why they want to make that trade. So I got to respect them on that. So I have a hard time vetoing trades. But yeah, that's the baseball drama. And there's some big names that have been going through. I think Aaron Judge was one of the names this morning. So, yeah, those were some big names that were going through on the chat. But let's focus up and let's look at some of these other trades. Let's go take a look back at PAGS. Because we weren't, and this is looking like underneath of the gap. It's turned red on the day. It's got this false wick top that kind of faked this out a little bit. But all in all, I think this is a reasonable setup. But the setup is going to come in around these 1050s to 1025s. So we're probably a little bit early. Not the most amount of volume increase on this. There was a 6 million in that day, which followed up with a wick, showing that resistance up towards this flat top. And that was part of the reason why we didn't trade it yesterday, is because we said, hey, it filled this gap. Well, and then it filled that gap, yesterday, and it started showing like it wanted to push higher. So that could have been part of what faked this out a little bit. But all in all, it's not as volatile, and we don't have any size on it. We just made our entry level position on it. RXRX could be a reasonable trade here. Testing, putting a little bit of a wick into those 14s holding. Let's look at the 15-minute chart on this. Setting up that flat bottom break right here, which is also these previous highs. So you can see it wick, wick, wick. I would say risk reward off of these lows right here is reasonable. You can run a stop right underneath those 14s. You have a gap fill right here that could shake you out, where you get stopped out, it wicks this gap, and that ends up being the low. But still, I think it's a reasonable setup, and why I say it's reasonable is because you probably have some sort of uptrend right here. Whether this is a perfect channel or not, I would say something like that. You try to hold over top of that. But a reasonable channel. So down here, I'd say your risk reward is reasonable. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Let's just take a look at the port and see what we got in store for us today. AFRM still holding those 1750s. Top mover on the day is that 3M. Maybe I can go. I looked at the earnings report on my phone this morning when I woke up, was walking the dog around. But yeah, I mean, on a non-GAAP basis, 217. I seen they had some bigger write-off, that big write-off from the litigation playing into it. But let's go ahead and just pull that earnings report up and take a look at it on stream here. Nope, we can't go right there. Let's see what's trending on the day. We can see 3M right here. RTX? Why does that sound familiar? To find that earnings report, there is the loss per share, 12.35. That does not look good. Don't get me wrong, but let's just go ahead and go down. Let's go look at the investor relations. Let's look at the financial statements, because that's all I really care about at the end of the day. Net sales year over year decrease, which is all right. They've been consistent around these 8 billion in sales. Cost of goods sales decreased about the same amount as the revenue decrease, so not as concerned about that. There's the big litigation write-off that they have. But here's the shares where they bought back 18 million shares year over year. So if they can continue buying back about that many shares year over year, that's the part that I'm going to say looks good. Cash, their cash on hand increased year over year. So I do like that. Long-term debt, they still paid off some of that long-term debt. Let's go to that cash flow statement right here. Uh, cash provided, net cash provided from operating activities, so 2.7 billion. So looking at that long-term debt, let's go back to that balance sheet. Long-term debt of 12 billion, so that's paid off. If they're able to uh, repeat this quarter after quarter, that's 6 quarters that they'd be able to pay off. A little under 6 quarters, they'd be able to pay off their long-term debt. So we're looking at a year and a half of cash flow to pay off their debt, which is going to leave them a lot of room for continued buybacks. So that's, all in all, I would say that's reasonable for the price. And looking at the 217 a share, minus the write-off, if they're able to put that quarter after quarter after quarter, one, it covers their dividend. Two, for $110 stock, let's just say they put up $2 a quarter. So 4 quarters, that makes $8. $8 divided by 110, which is the current price. We could use 100, which is what it was trading. So let's do 110 divided by 8. That's saying 13 years of EPS would be able to pay off the current price. So in my eyes, if you can double up on an investment in 6 to 10 years, that's a reasonable assumption. But this is also saying that is 3M going to be able to continue growing? They're already being projected 250 for the next quarter. So looking at year over year, right around that 250. So maybe it's even a little bit less than 8 years that they'd be able to pay off their total share price and EPS. So I'd say it's a reasonable earnings report. I see why the price is up. The price has been beaten down, but also looking from a charting perspective, the gap up over top of this neckline looks really good. So I'm not interested in selling. I'm going to see if we can continue getting that price movement to the upside, where we have this descending channel, longer term descending channel. Let's switch it over to a weekly, where you can see this flat top over here, which is what we tested, came all the ways from 250 a share all the ways back in to test that flat top. It needed a litigation for a bigger time litigation for it to get the price all the ways back down to that flat top. Long-term mentality. Am I going to be able to run this all the ways up into the 150s? I don't know. But if it ran up to the 150s and I didn't have it, I'd be pretty upset. Looking around, ELBM still fighting at the right above those twos. I would say PWM is also one that we want to keep on watch, and reason being is we have that alert in right there. I don't know if we'd play it or not, but if it alerts it and comes back in, and my 34 catches up, and we meet in around these 1625s, maybe that's a reasonable long the punch. Sun W. Low volume on this pullback, which is a really good look, I would say. Looking at the daily chart, a nice retest and hold of this neckline. This is when we put it on the radar, put it on the watch list. It put that green engulfing candle through that. Now testing back into those tops, wicked into it a couple times, and now starting to turn green. So, anybody who tested that neckline around these 160 to 155, you're in the money pretty decent right there. Reasonable look. Let's keep looking around. Let's go look back at RBLX and see what that's doing. Right around those 40s. AFRM still holding these 1750s, which is a good sign. And you can see this candle trying to take out this red engulfing candle. One thing, 9 minutes left in this candle. I wouldn't want to see it start wicking into the middle of that red candle and showing you that, hey, anybody short off this candle, they're willing to take some profits and reshort it in the middle of that red candle. So holding a nice green candle is a good look, and you can see the descending channel starting to play out a little bit, where if you're able to break over top of that, pretty decent look there. Moving along, let's look at the end phase. End phase still holding above this neckline, wicked all the ways up to those 182.20s. But I think we're going to be committed to this. We're not really going to be looking to add any more from this time being, but notable chart setup where I wouldn't say you maybe have some sort of uptrend build, so maybe it needs to pull back into 75s. I would say it's reasonable, but what we're looking for on end phase is for this to gap up, and I know my chart's probably sloppy there, so let's go over to a day chart with everything cleared. And I'm going to keep it simple. We're just going to mark our long-term uptrend, we're going to mark our long-term channel, and we're going to mark our downtrend. So that's the picture. So what we're looking for, here's your earnings gap down from the earnings before. You hold the trend line. If we're able to gap up over top of 192, why is 190 so important? You look at these lows right here. I'm sure during these earnings report, it regardless of what it did in the after hours, I can almost promise you that as soon as it took out 190s, you had some stops kick in, and when it opens the next day underneath of that, that's where you get that continuation to the downside. Well, now we tested up towards that. If we can get over top of 190s and break over top of this downtrend, I don't see why it couldn't run up to 220s. But all in all, I think your dream move is going to come if it's able to push up to those top end of the channel. So I think end phase is reasonable setup. But of course, it could easily have to come back down to the 160s. That's a part of investing, and I look at this as an investment because we could go back over, and I can show you why I look at it as a long-term investment. One, the growth is unquestionable. They've been able to compound quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter, beating estimates every single time. You have a little bit of share dilution, but for that growth, I'm okay with a little bit of share dilution if it helps them reinvest that capital. But EPS, you can see the consistent growth in EPS. Margins, solid margins, they operate at 23% and growing 10, 13, 14, 17, 21, 21.5. 23. If they can continue growing operating margins, that checks the boxes. So the question is, why has it sold off like it has when everything's been ripping pretty good? We go over to the balance sheet. They got 1.7 bill in the bank. You're looking at long-term debt of 1.2. So not only does the cash cover it, you could say long-term liabilities. The cash still covers it. Total current assets, 2.5 bill. Total current liabilities. So we're looking at a current ratio a little above 3. So that's a solid current ratio with solid growth. We look over to the cash flow statement. We look at the quarterly. Last quarter they put up 2.2 or 220 million in cash flow. Consistent cash flow that the company is bringing in. We look at an annualized report. Look at that growth on cash flow. If they can continue putting up 200 million in cash flow every single quarter, we're looking at 800 million on the year. Go back to the long-term liabilities. They cover their long-term liabilities in a year and a half. I don't know what else to look at. You're looking at it, return on invested capital. The company clearly returns invested capital or uses their capital very well. Return on equity, very well. I don't see too many negatives with it. Maybe the PE is a little high. We can see forward PE of 30. If you're looking at a 30 PE for a growth rate of, let's say they can't put up this type of growth rate. They're projected, what are they projecting? So last year they put up 530. Projections for this quarter, 725. So that represents almost 50% growth. And if they beat and then put up 750, that's around 50% growth. If they're able to put up 30% growth for the next 5 years, I will gladly pay a 30 PE for this company. That's just what I see. So that's end phase. It's part of the title, so I was going to talk about it. But all in all, I'd say end phase reasonable setup in an earnings report that has consistently beat quarter after quarter. These aren't small beats either. Beating on 14 cents EPS, beating on 24 cents EPS, beating on 19 cents EPS, beating on 21 cents EPS, beating on 11 cents EPS, beating on 14 cents EPS, beating on 11 cents EPS. So looking at this EPS of 128, Is it out of the question for them to go back over and put up $1.40 in EPS, which that would be year over year EPS of 140 would be about 35% growth. You guys heard it first right here. Let's take a look over at this INVAX trade. You can see it's been trading sideways around this 8, and this is why we played it yesterday. It was holding, and we said that if it can hold above 8, it looks good. Let's go look at the 15-minute chart here. Pulling back into the level, a little bit light on the volume off of this volume increase at the open. Reasonable setup. Roblox taking out the highs of the previous candle right at that 40 break. So I'd say Roblox has a decent setup right here. And I think playing it off of this longer term trend line, I don't see why it couldn't catch a bid up into these 40s somewhere. So this is going to be one that we watch. If it gets up to 40 half, that's where we're going to start trimming the name. Looking around a little bit more. Let's go to Affirm. Breaking over those 18s. Hold on. Nice channel break. We just put that channel in on Affirm. Breaking over top of that 1780 was a nice break for the day. Is it going to be able to show some continuation? We got 2 minutes left on this candle. If it shows you a nice green candle close like this, I don't see why it couldn't match another equal size candle up to those 1825s. But Affirm, a pretty decent setup in my opinion. That's what we're going to be playing. FERR, a nice green candle coming in here as well. We look at the daily chart here, pulled back in. We identified this low up at 32s, and we never did get that 32 fill. We respected the 30 halves and respected the 31s, which was the wick high and in the middle of this wick. But for some reason, we didn't do the same thing at 32, which was actually the low. And the reason why we didn't is because we said, hey, the more wick area, the more where it tried to hold support was towards that 33. So we thought we'd be able to get 33s on the name, but obviously we weren't able to do so. Oh boy, oh boy. This ELBM leaving that wick top. We thought that, with this price up over top of these 240s, you can see the resistance that it was able to maybe fight over, where if it showed that break, you had that gap up at 3. That's what we were really looking for. Just weren't able to get that comp. Man, we were watching this for the gap. We had alerts on that day for the break at 3. Just never did. Would have ended up being the wick low, but you can see that U coming in, where if this is a wave 1, here's your wave 2 pullback, probably about a half retracement. If you're able to break over top of this 425, which we're above right now, reasonable setup to maybe punch long. Nice couple green candles, hold a positive support. You have a trend line on your commodity as well. You have a couple weeks before the earnings report that you don't really have to worry about it. I don't see why it couldn't catch some continuation. Let's go take a look at the 15-minute chart. You can see green, 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 green. And even in this pullback area, very light volume, only about 10K in each candle. I would say an impressive earnings report that I've seen. I don't know if you're still there, Drift, but this new core company. This is a name that we've played a lot, and honestly, ever since we got out of it over here in the 170s, we never really tried to reload the position, and I'm kind of regretting that because after looking at their earnings report was damn good. They put up, I believe, 581 EPS. Yeah, 581 EPS, a solid beat. But $5 EPS for a $172 stock, that's pretty damn good. Well, what other names? Let's take a look back at that Lucid trade. We haven't got alerted on it yet, so still holding those 7s. Is it going to be able to hold those 7s? I don't really know. I'm going to go let the dogs outside. I'm going to go refill my coffee and go to the bathroom. And when I come back, hopefully this Lucid is still holding these 7s. But if it isn't, maybe we'll be put to the test with it. But I'll be right back regardless. And we will try and find some trades. I know it's been probably a little boring since we got out of ELBM, but it is what it is. But I'll be back. And we are back. Ooh, I see that this crossed over 7. Leaving a nice wick for the time being, but still gonna have to fight through this continuation to the downside. As you can see, a nice solid downtrend right here. Kind of a parallel channel as well. So let's just go ahead and re-put that alert in for 90s. You are still there? Well, I'd be surprised if you're still there now that I just took a 10-minute break. But if you're still there, you know, Drift, you are the GOAT. You know that? Even if you're not there, you're still the GOAT because you tune in every single time I live stream and you add some positive energy that I can respect. So I'm forever grateful for you tuning in every single day. Uh, ELBM trying to set some sort of double bottom, but on the 15-minute just looks like junk. Wick, false wick through the top there. Exila pumping. So maybe we can switch that title. You are? Well, we're in on Exila. Not necessarily one. We've just kind of just been holding since it's been holding this range right here. Got a couple entries playing with this 5, but looking at the daily candle, you can see that this is actually starting to break out a little bit. So if this is something like this, ascending channel, we think this has good room up to 6. But I'd be crazy not to at least take a piece off of this area that we're at. So let's just go over and take a look at Exila and what type of size do you know, it's been so long. We still got 90% of the position left, so let's just go ahead and take a 10% cut. It just gave up those 60s. So maybe we can be a little patient and see if we can get those 60s again. 57s give out here. We're just going to go ahead and trim it. Well, you can see that wick top showing that wick. So now if it were to pull back into like 25s, we feel pretty good reloading off 25s. If it wants to keep going higher, we're all for it. But let's go ahead and just take a piece off right here. We didn't get the wick top, but ringing the register on a day where, you know, all we've done is get stopped out of that ELBM trade. And Lucid not giving us the action that we wanted off the open. Right back into the original entry, we got 701s and 795. So now we're put in this little pickle where you're also getting a negative break on that 15-minute chart. But we do know that these big players are playing around this middle ground right here. Big players, boom, gaps down. Pulls back in, looks like crap. Well, that's right at that middle ground. It ends up showing some strength and gapping up, giving us a leg up. On the positive break, if you were playing the positive break, it was a 688, where you were able to run that up higher. Where this pulled back in, where does it pull back in? 688 was the break. 694 is the test. So is this going to be able to hold these 7s is the big question, where 697 looks reasonable for, you know, maybe is this going to get some continuation to the downside? I don't know. Affirm still holding those close to 18. So let's go take a look at Affirm, and you can see that wick top comes up to as high as 1805. I don't see why it can't match this. I guess this candle's about over right here. Still some good volume coming in, so buyers coming in towards these tops. If I just mark these tops right here, you can see that's exactly where it pulled back into. So if it's able to, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to grab my coffee cup. I'll stay on the headset because I know my coffee cup is just right up there. Benefits of a wireless headset. But let's refill that coffee and check up on the trades and see what's going on elsewhere. Ooh, it's hot. I will say we are liking this Workiva trade as well. Just looking at the portfolio, taking out the highs right here. Workiva, we were talking about this way back on the 96 break over here. Early entry for that 97. Played the consolidation off of these previous highs. Trimmed the levels up to the upside. Retested the 50 period. We were trying to get some shares on this day. Just weren't able to. Hold on, I gotta catch my breath. Okay, we're back. Uh, just had to take a couple deep breaths. The dog was running around with the other dog. I was playing with him. But a nice channel that we have drawn in right here, where we think it's possible we can get this right in front of this 16 gap right here, which should meet up near top end of the channel. But earnings are coming up, so we are looking to take a little piece off of this. If it's able to show us some strength back up to 108, we're looking for a green candle that we can take profit above that. And if we can get a further break to the upside, that's what we'll be looking for. What else can we see? Lucid still holding those sevens. We did make a notable move yesterday I didn't talk about. Hold on, just looking at a couple things quick. Oh yeah, the notable move yesterday was Allison. We actually cut the position on Allison yesterday. We cut the position on Allison yesterday, and we did in the middle of this. We started seeing it wick into these previous lows right here. And this has been one that we ran pretty good. We were playing this off of the channel break. So you can see the uptrend. Let's switch it to a weekly chart because this gives a better idea. I would love to say that we were playing this uptrend, but actually where we played it was the break of the downtrend and retest. So you can see right here, let's keep it so that we can adjust it. You can see we have a clear downtrend, we break it, and we retest it with a higher low. This is where we were playing in these low 40s. We trimmed it up to the levels, we trimmed it up to the all-time highs, we trimmed it up as close to 60 as we could. We ended up taking a market fill, and now we just exited the position. You know, it still has good strength. It still looks like it can go. But looking at this daily chart, a very strong move. If it's able to take out the highs, we think it's approaching close to that area. But now that we've exited the position, if it retests near this 50 flat, which is insinuating about 16% to the downside, 15% to the downside, we think that that's going to be an area where we're going to attempt to reload the position. And if we're too early at 50, we do have this gap fill right here around 48.30s that we can get some continuation with it. But other than that, I mean, everything else has been great show. My bad. I don't know how long ago you said that. Great show. What was I just going to look at? I was going to look at something. What was it that I was going to look at? Oh yeah, of course, the banks. We're still holding in off these bank positions. We had some trims yesterday, one right off the gap for BAC, and the last trim that we had before that. So here's your gap fill. You fill the gap. We just took a piece off. I think it was around 8%. But the other area that we also took was 31 halves. As it was wicking towards that, it was around 62, I believe, that we got. But still some continuation. There's a couple different ways that I can see it. We have this, now that we've able to broke this kind of downtrend right here. Next area was the gap off of 34. So if that wants to show us continuation, the banks are strong. The earnings were great. Everything that we expected. They also had a dividend increase of 9.1%. So, I mean, check the box across the board. Bought back a good amount of shares as well. But looking at KRE. KRE green on the day, top end of the channel. We took the 42 break off of, man, where was the 42 break? Somewhere in here. And no, here's your 42 break down here. So yeah, we're sitting pretty good in this position right here. Just played a neckline break, and we're actually trying to get orders in as close to 42 as possible. Just never pulled in. But right at this top end of the channel, is it going to be able to break through and give us those 50s? So we're looking for 50s on KRE, and then if it's able to, we want to at least try and give it a chance to run up to that flat bottom break. Boom, holding support. Boom, breaks down. Doesn't even give a test up to that flat bottom break. So maybe with KRE, it's going to give us a little bit higher of a move, which would lead me to think that Bank of America should be able to follow it. So up to those 34s for the next target is what we're going to be looking for. Let's keep an eye on Lucid. Lucid still holding 7, so a good 7 hold right there. RBLX. RBLX still right in around those 40s. So I feel good holding this. Unless it gives me some red engulfing candle, my out's going to be 39. Even though we got a gap right here, there isn't too much more room I can give this trend line. Maybe I can give it the bodies of the candle and pull this down a little bit. But even then, if it fills this gap a couple days later, I don't know. More than likely I'm going to be kicking myself for not running a deep stop down to 37. But, do I want to hold it in a few dollars against me? Yeah, I don't know if I want to or not. But reclaiming these 40s now, let's go take a look at this 15-minute chart. Trying to give this curl. So you got buyers off the 21. It's trying to hold these 40s, giving you this sort of neckline break at 40.05. If it's able to take that out, can we see a test up to these 25s? We're talking breakout. Anybody short off this level, which not the most amount of volume increase, but a nice red candle. So getting over top of that, I don't see why it can't run up to this 40.50 to 40.60 area. But even if it needs to pull back in, we think that this trend line is an area that we can play off of and maybe add some more. End phase holding these 180s. It's a good look. I'd say the strongest one on the day is AFRM, which is catching a nice bid to the upside. So really nice add back in, a reload of the position. We're trimming this name over in the 18s. I think 1850s is our best fill. We thought we were going to get, no, it wasn't there. I think 1850s is our best fill. It gets as high as 70s. But it made an attempt to run up to that gap where I would be shocked if I didn't try to get a piece off right there. But up into these 19s, even if you get over top of 19s, that could be some sort of breakout level where let's put a horizontal line on that and look further to the left. You can see up to these 22s is reasonable. Looks like maybe a flat top up at those 22s. Let's look at the daily. Yeah, a nice build. Where I could say, an aggressive channel that it has right here, but potentially a channel where you can get an exhaustive move, and top end of the channel I'd say meets up around this $27 gap. So if we just got a nice reload from our initial 14, we were playing this 14 flat top. You can see the flat top right here. It doesn't always work out as beautiful as this, but you get the break of that flat top, it retests that 14, and we actually have a fill here too. So to have a 14 entry, we run it all the ways up to 18, and we get a reload here down at 1720s or something like that today. I mean, you can't beat that. And now over $1 in the money, showing good strength on good volume. We see no reason why it can't get up and test up towards this 1850. So I'd say that's the bright spot of today. It would be a firm. Oil's been notably strong. I mean, do we even need to go to the oil chart drift? Let's clear everything. I mean, if there's one thing that I can say that I was holding strong with, it was banks and oil. And we were talking about oil off this uptrend in these upper 60s. Bounce, bounce, bounce. And what were we talking about? We were talking about XLE. XLE oil fund. You get the two premium top oil plays in ExxonMobil and Chevron. And now breaking through this downtrend on a gap up, didn't even have the weakness to pull back into 84s. Catching a bid, testing up to 86 right now. I would say oil is probably your safest bet for continuation. Looking at Fastenal, we haven't been sure how to play Fastenal. We talked about this gap down from earnings as a potential area, but now that we're through that, without me even noticing, uh, I don't see why I shouldn't continue holding it. We got this nice volume increase near this breakout level over top of this neckline the following day. We're getting paid a dividend that doesn't get paid till the 24th. But all in all, does it need the pullback? And we have a nice uptrend that's built here. So even if it pulls back into like 56s, it looks like you have a pretty solid uptrend. I don't see why this couldn't continue this sort of U-shaped build. If it is a retracement, you're breaking through that 702 today and solidifying. You can see those wicks going into that 702. You can see it holding in or resisting that 702. We break it, we wick into 72. We wick as high as the 702. I don't see why this can't run up to 60, which is these tops right here. I don't see why it couldn't. So let's just hold fast and see if we can get some further movement to the upside. Fastenal is one that we have. It's run in my family for quite some time, but we were playing it in the 40s. We trimmed it all the ways up. We played this like a flat top where it broke over top of that flat top. Look at this day. You gap up over that flat top. We're right on the bid at 55s, a retest of these flat tops, right off the gap fill, and getting some good continuation. I don't see why we can't hold that entry, and still holding this nice green candle. Looks like it's strong. Look at the 15-minute chart. Here's the open of the candle. It gaps up, retraces down, fills the gap. Buyers are there. It shows that wick bottom to the downside. False wick to the downside. Pushes up. Nice bull flag continuation play taking out the highs. And that's right at the gap fill too. So let's see how it played off this gap. It wicked up towards that gap. Now taking out that gap and closing above it. That's big. That's big. I know it doesn't seem like much. It's a slower mover, but finding these strong names, getting the entries on them, and just holding them and letting them run. The market's been strong. When you see the setups playing out, sometimes it's about getting that first entry, and once it starts working for you, you feel really good about it. I mean, you feel the comfort to probably try and hold more so than not hold. So I don't see why I should even think about selling. And that reminds me of Plug. Plug's been pretty weak over the last few days. But when you get the entries down near a 9 flat and then you average up at around that 10 area, it's so easy to just trim the levels to the upside. We're on the ask all through this area up here. And now pulling back in, if it pulled back into like 1120s, we feel good off that flat top right there, off these wick tops right here. We feel good, 1120 to 11. We feel pretty good with the name. But you can see the channel playing out. Where here's your bottom end of the channel. Here's your top end of the channel. Pretty clean channel build right here. So even if it pulled back into that 11 to 1050, you got that uptrend right there. That's why we're looking to reload. But still holding a piece just in case we get some movement to the upside. Right in around this 12 level, I feel is probably pretty good entry where I think it can hold that area. Yeah, good strength on the name. Decreasing volume on this pullback. Not the cleanest volume increase on the upside, but notable chart setup. IBM, We still haven't gotten this 40 gap fill. There's a flat top, and then you have another flat top gap, or a green candle gap at 142. So we're looking at this as a trim area. It just hasn't been able to get there yet. Let's get a refresh on the watch. ELBM still holding these twos. Setting up the flat bottom break at 2 though. All it would take is put a red candle through 2 and boom, right down to 175 you go. PDD, I knew it was going to be up today. I knew for about a fact it was going to be up today because I didn't try it yesterday. You know, even towards the close, but we were sitting here off of 77s yesterday, just looking at it. Oh, we were just looking at this yesterday. We didn't realize the Chinese ADRs were going to be as hot as they were. But we seen the volume start increasing, and you know, had it pulled back into the 77s, we would have had our entry right here. But looking at the daily chart, you can see why that 77s. How many times have I looked at this as that sort of flat top break? Boom! Now you're actually getting a true breakout over top of the highs. At least this 80s, getting into those 80s is a really solid look. Where here's your wave one, here's your retracement. You test up to that flat top. Beautiful, beautiful setup. Exila has a wick top up to those 70s. Strong move. You know, I think that 70s is reasonable area. Let's look at PAGS. Setting up that flat bottom on a negative break to the downside. You know, we should go look back at Lucid. Lucid, a nice 7 hold. Right around this middle ground right here. Docs. I don't know if you're still there, Drift, but this is a company. If you're still there, I'll give you the breakdown of what I'm thinking with Docs. But I think this has a nice channel, or a nice wedge pattern that's building. Where you probably have a downtrend like that. But we're looking this for earnings play as well. You know, maybe it's a little bit overvalued still, simply because they have a little bit more share count for a newer company. I think it's around 160 million. But if you're there, I'll give you the pitch for why I'm looking at this play. But I want to see it break down just a little bit further. And reason being, we have some good support in these 32s, which is where that 200 day, I believe, is. Forward, you know, we're okay holding forward back in. You know, if forward comes back into that 13 level, this is where we're going to start hitting reloads. PWM, was that a downside alert or an upside alert? Looks like an upside alert. Up to 1950s. Oh boy. This is really going to put us to the test, huh? Showing you that nice U shape. Do we try PWM here? Oh god. Not a lot of volume. That might keep me away from it. Notable move though. CLF, we had the entry on this. We just didn't hold through with it. Just weren't able to hold through with it. Breaking out a little bit higher now. Where's that Zila? Now we already had our trim on Zila. Let's give it some time to breathe. Your back drift? Oh yeah, I was gonna I was talking about that Doximity. This is a play I've been looking at. Now that you're back and I got somebody that is gonna listen, I'm looking at this wedge pattern as a potential trend line that we can play. But I'm gonna go show you why I like this play. I'm gonna go look at docs. Consistent revenue growth. Looking at the annual, it is decreasing. But if they can put this revenue growth up and continue growing, the shares hasn't increased that much, but actually starting to buy back on the diluted side just a little bit. EPS are positive, margins, high margin company. They operate well around that 30% profit margin, upper 20s, free cash flow margin consistently around those 40s. So it checks the boxes everywhere on the income statement. Look to the balance sheet. We got 840 million on the books. You got some receivables that they can still collect, which is all right. Current assets, almost a bill. Total current liabilities, about a 6.5, 6.8 current ratio, which is very well. Long-term debt, only 13 million, so the cash covers it hand over fist. And then we're going to go look at the cash flow statement right here. Look at the cash flow statement. Free cash flow, consistently putting up free cash flow. Not the most amount of growth on free cash flow, but with only 13 million in long-term liabilities, this cash flow, if they can continue growing that cash flow, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Small acquisitions that I could have to go look into, but nothing too alarming. And then we look at the ratios. Trades at a high PE. Forward PE, if they're continuing to grow, maybe it trades a little bit rich. That's the one thing that's really keeping me away from it. But I do like the chart setup with that uptrend. But then you add in the consistency on the return on invested capital and return on equity. Pretty decent look. So I like everything. The only question is that valuation a little bit high? They're calculating in a 40 PE, so if they're able to grow around this 20%, I say that's reasonable. But the current PE around 63. The only question is it a little bit rich? So then the next thing that I'm going to go do is we're going to go bring over our moving average and where I'm looking to play this. Let me go get it set up quick. I'm going to pull this over. Here's Doximity's moving averages, where you have a mess of these EMAs. One, you have a 50 EMA cross and the price tanked. It tries to reclaim it, Now we reclaim it. And now is this a time where we kind of set this higher low continuation where we know we have this trend line in right here. So even if it fails at 200, we got that trend line as backup. I look at it as the financials check all the boxes. They do good with their cash. They have no debt. It's a growing company. The only question is what they do. It has to do with like virtual healthcare, where doctors and our physicians are able to meet with their clients on a platform. But if they're able to grow and keep those high margins, I look at it as a pretty reasonable trade. To take a high margin company and maybe take out this support up here, and before you know it, we're in the 40s. But I thought that was reasonable. One that I found on some of the scans. I don't know if you have any input on that, but we like the setup that it has. If we can play this support level in these 32s, so I'm really happy that this is down 1.5%. If this can get some continuation to the downside, I don't see why it wouldn't be able to wick into these 32s, which is your trend line. I don't know, maybe you have some input on that, maybe you don't. But that is a new kind of longer term trade. If it breaks this trend line, worst thing is we get out around this 30 break. We run a true stop down to these 30s. And you got the gap at 26.5 that you can start playing if it gets back down there. We get some weakness in the market or something. This ELBM, it's not a good looking candle, so I'm not even gonna go look at the 15-minute. Xewa still looking decent. Let's get on that 15-minute chart. Is this going to be able to give us some sort of break to the high side? Let's take a look back at a firm pullback candle. I don't see why we can't get nice increase in volume right here. Got a larger red volume coming in, but we do have a wick of buying pressure. People trying to get in, push those shorts. I'm sure there's some short interest on this name. Let's take a look at Roblox. Roblox rejecting those 40s, but is it able to set some sort of higher low in off this 21 EMA, catch a bid and break over those 40s again? We'll take a look at that later. Lucid, let's go see if that's holding those. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Still holding these 7s. Looks like it's going to be a flat bottom break, and it's giving up these 7s right now, putting me in a little bit of a bind. Just a little bit of a bind right here. You see this candle. You know, I'm thinking run a stop down to these 80s. You know, if it gives up this 34 and cracks negative, we could see some downside on the name. But it is pretty gap-free chart. You know, if the longs are really going to hold this, they're going to want to hold above this 660, 670 range. Still holding 7s for the time being. A brick is smarter than me. Don't sell yourself short. This Hibbit. This was the big fake out of yesterday. As you know, we've been talking about a Hibbit. Only 12 million shares total. But it really put us to the test, and we didn't play this gap. I wish we did. But yesterday, actually in the pre-market, it was down 12%, putting it down to like 35.70, I believe it was at. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get blessed by the gods. And then it opened and it actually gapped up. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. But yeah, Hibbit is one that we've been keeping our eyes on. Simply looking for, we thought we were going to be able to get this leg down, and why we like it, it's just back testing a neckline trade. You got a left leg to the downside, you build your neckline, you set your, well, your neckline ends right here. You set your right bottom, and you're able to push over top of these highs. So anytime I see this setup, the first thing that goes to my mind is, hey, we got to back test this neckline right here. And look at this descending channel that's been drawn out. Boom. Where bottom end of that channel meeting up around those 30s. To me, this is a no-brainer long. You know, obviously I state that I'm not a financial advisor at the beginning of every one of my live streams, but this to me is going to be a no-brainer long if it comes down into this 30 range. And we are going to be buyers off of that support. No questions asked. But yeah, it faked me out yesterday. It was showed 12% to the downside at the open pre-market yesterday, or maybe it was 11%. But we're like, oh my gosh, thank you. But no, we're not in off the Hibbit, which we should be. I can't believe we're not in off this. Actually giving fake outs of this positive break right here. We're hoping that it can reject, trade back down, where I think we're going to start in around those 36 or 35s. And if we're lucky enough to get it down near these 30s, that's where we're going to be playing it. ELBM continuing to show this move to the upside, holding these twos, setting up that flat bottom, but also setting up a neckline break around these 25. So if it can reclaim those 25s, that's where we think these shorts got in. So the breakdown of this bull flag, boom, red engulfing, holds 2, holds the 21. We got 34 holding these twos. So it's going to play a decision. We're either going to reclaim 25s or we're going to break down 2s. It's going to pick one way or the other, whether we like it or not. But moving on, you know, I gotta go into work earlier today, so I don't think I'm really going to play anything new. We're going to sit here with this Roblox. We think Roblox looks really good. Gaps up, doesn't have the weakness to come down to these 39 halves and fill that gap. Takes out 40s, tries to hold 40s, breaks down, respects the 21, sets up the neckline, and now reclaiming 40s, we think that we're going to get this sort of breakout over top of these 40 halves. Not 40 halves, these 40 05s. Where my first out I'm looking for is going to be in the 40 halves. You know, if we're able to push over top of those lows right there, my next sell window is this flat bottom break. Boom. Test, hold, 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 breaks down, and then test it again to the upside. And that happens right at 42 to 42 quarter. So early entries, playing this trend line is all we're doing. Nice trend line, whether the trend line is set perfectly or not. That's what we're playing right here. And it's showing us that we can maybe retrace up, and our levels are in at 42. You can see these wicks in there. There's your flat bottom break. There's your retest to the bottom of those wicks and your continuation to the downside. Where does it go? Right to the trend line. So that's kind of what we're playing with the roadblocks. We're not sure if it's going to work out yet. But a lot of times it's about getting the entry, trimming some levels to the upside, and who knows, maybe this catches a bid, and we're talking about it up here at 44.80 before you know it, and we're $4 in the money. So that's what we're looking for there. Looking around, let's go back to that affirm trade. Breaking out up to these 1850s. I don't see why we shouldn't take profit on this. We got the golden entries off of this neckline break. You know, at the start we were saying, I don't know if it's going to work, but then we seen this candle come in and we knew right off the rip when it started wicking into that breakout level. Boom, 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 boom. Wick, wick, wick. Breakout of this short descending channel right here. Boom. Now we're getting that movement. Up to 1850. I don't see why we shouldn't take a piece off, but let's see if we can even hold this for some further movement to the upside. You can see the strength is there, reclaiming into that overbought area, looking very good on the daily chart. The problem is, it wicks up towards this gap, it never fills it. So maybe we can wait for those 75s to come in. Rejecting 1850s for now, but we're looking to hold this a little bit longer. But really the first reloads coming on in since we trimmed those 18s. You know, we had a pretty gnarly position off of that 14 flat top break. You know, I've talked about it many times, but why not? Let's just go over there. So this is why I like playing Affirm on these flat tops, because these buyers are there. You can see, break that flat top, you retest the flat top, and you go. Great outs on the name. Nice sideways consolidation. You can see the higher low coming on in, the higher low close, and then the gap up near this sort of breakout level. Looks really good. Uh, oh boy, oh boy, what to do, what to do. With Exila. Nice light volume on this pullback right here. Waiting for this candle, next candle to open. Only 1K in volume off a nice increase. I don't see why this can't be a continuation play. You can see the catalyst for the channel to the upside. Nice hold. You know, maybe the channel is not set perfectly. But we do have the open of the next candle. Maybe we can watch this for a little bit, but a nice movement to the upside. And you can see why we even like this name in the first place. So setting up some nice resistance over here. Boom. Hasn't been able to close above this line. And now putting a nice green candle through that. It has a couple wicks, so maybe tail end of the day it sells off. But one big part about this, and this is why I like it, is you see this strength. This strength hasn't given you any positive break. So let's see when our last positive break was. This is the last time we were holding positive right here. Boom. Here's your positive break. Let's go take a look at it. Boom. You gap up, you trade down into the level, which was a high. Let's not forget, with the share splits, this is a $7,000 stock. You hold it based off strength. You hold it all the ways over to here. When you break down, you know, maybe you hold it for support, but as soon as you break below that, there's your negative break. Never go positive. You have a ink of positive up here at $8,800. Since then, just going off this strength bar, you have a little bit of a false break right there. Stopped out.
gets close to positive, gap down, continuation to the downside. Get close to that positive break right there, boom. I'm sure you got stopped out. You get close to that positive break right here, gaps up, stopped out. Close to the positive break right here, stopped out. Well, maybe you held it. Maybe you're holding in the middle of this green candle right here off of this volume increase since the share split. And now we actually have a true positive break where you have an ascending channel to the upside, give or take something like this, where I don't see why it can't catch a bid to the top end of the channel off of this nice positive break. You know, we're talking about that last positive break up at 8,000. This is down here at 5. So if you were just holding, sold it off that negative break, and you're buying it for a positive break right here, it's a nice setup, breaking over that 530 range. Beautiful look. Uh, all in all, you know, I don't think I have really much else for you guys today. You know, I had that trade worked out on ELBM early in the morning. Probably a different story. You know, could have started trimming some of that AFRM at 1850, but nice green candle coming in. We want to hold for a higher move, honestly. Oil's continuing the pump. Maybe we're getting closer to that range where we can start taking some profit on oil. If it gets up into these 80s, low 80s, yeah, that's probably going to be where we're going to start taking some profits on oil. But we're going to be pretty bullish if it gets up into those 80s. Reason being, if it's able to get up over 82.5, the next kind of range that it trades in is up in the 90s. Top end, this double top right in there. Where if this is some sort of retracement play, you know, that 80 to 80 half is that first retracement. And maybe I just match it up to the top end of this. You know, there's no really true way to do that. Unless we go like that. So, you know, 91's that next area. After that, right in front of 100, your 702's up at 110. If this turns into some sort of retracement, this is going to be that first area that we're going to start playing. Zila continuing to catch a bid up at these 560s. Looking at the market, looks like NQ is a strong name for the day. Getting into underneath that overbought just briefly, but I think that it's got some good support built in off these 15s. So seeing if that can hold, maybe get continuation to the upside. But yeah, that is going to call it for the live stream today. Appreciate you tuning in, Drift, and listening to me ramble on about a bunch of nonsense. So it does mean a lot that you tune in every single stream. But that is going to call it for the live stream today. Maybe we can be better tomorrow. We took that losing trade on ELBM. Maybe we look back over at Lucid, still holding this 7. So it's like, I mean, what do I do with this? What do I do with it? I don't really want to sell it right off this 7 flat, which is my entry. You know, maybe it can catch a bid. Maybe we have some sort of trend line in, meeting in right there. Maybe it's an ad right here. I mean, I don't know. Of course, Roblox playing it like a trend line, still right in around these 40s. So it's like, does it, when it breaks down, do we put a stop underneath 39 to run a deeper stop? Maybe that's the play. In phase. Showing those wicks into those 79s, which is your sort of flat top it's what we've continued wicking into. If it wants to curl, I don't see why it can't get up to 185, and then your breakout is the downtrend or 190, give or take. PAGS, maybe we take a look over at PAGS and see what that's doing. You know, I think a stop underneath 150 is reasonable. Negative break on a 15. I don't see why it couldn't just have to pull back into 1020s. Maybe that's what it needs to do. But we don't really have size. So, I mean, maybe we just hold that size. And if it does pull back into these 1025s, this is where we're looking to really hammer the position. Ramble on. Enjoy the rambling. Great show today. Appreciate it. We didn't have the home run trade that we were looking for, but we thought we had one on this ELBM. Sometimes that's how it works. But that is gonna call it for me today. So appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow on the live stream drift. Peace.